When Esther Daly was 49, she went to see her doctor for an annual physical. But she got some unexpected news.
The doctor told me my creatinine was high and that I needed to drink more water. And I said to him, I drink 8 to 10 glasses of water per day now. How much more do I need to drink? And he said, oh, well, we need to look into that further.
Creatinine is a normal byproduct of muscle metabolism. Too much creatinine could be a sign that something was wrong with Esther's kidneys. Maybe they weren't filtering her blood properly. So the doctor sent her in for more testing. That's when she found out she had a tumor on one of her kidneys.
So they removed my left kidney, and after that, then I had to start seeing a nephrologist on a regular basis.
Now that Esther had only one kidney, she needed to be monitored more closely, specifically with a test called an eGFR. That gave her a measurement of how well her remaining kidney was working.
I would have to go for my labs, and the GFR was the one that I looked at. It was the percentage of my kidney function.
When Esther checked her eGFR results, she found something strange. She noticed there were always two kidney function scores. One was an African American score, and the other was a non-African American score.
No one had ever explained to me the reason for the two different numbers. Not ever. I just thought, because I'm Black, then I look at that number and that was it. No other explanation.
But why were there two numbers? A kidney is a kidney, regardless of the color of your skin. So why were doctors measuring Esther's kidney differently because she was Black? To a lot of people, that didn't make sense.
I can't tell you how astounded I was. What was happening was a colossal misunderstanding of the meaning of race.
I was like, do Black people have more muscles than white people? Like, I don't think that's the case.
What I saw was extremely ugly. This is not about science. This is about politics, and this is about ego.
When you bring race into medicine, it's more than a color thing. This is people's lives you're messing with.
This is The Race Equation, a special series from the New England Journal of Medicine. I'm Rachel Gottbaum. I've been a medical reporter for many years, and I've covered a lot of stories, but this one haunts me. It began with my work at the Journal. I would sometimes see studies that used equations to diagnose and treat disease. The eGFR test that Esther took is one of them. These are known as clinical algorithms, and they help doctors determine just how healthy or sick their patient truly is. But it turns out that many of these diagnostic tools actually have race baked into them, and they produce different results for Black patients. Doctors rely on these clinical algorithms to help decide who may get on a wait list for an organ transplant, or during a pandemic, who is put on a ventilator. These can be life or death medical decisions that most of us assume are based on science. But what if the science is wrong? In this series, we will uncover what happens when race is factored into medical algorithms and how their use has prevented Black patients from receiving life-saving treatment for all kinds of diseases. We'll meet the young doctors fighting against these practices and the backlash they're facing. And we'll reveal just how hard it is to change a system even when doctors know it's harming patients. But let's get back to Esther Daly. Esther is 70 years old now, and she lives in Maryland. For nearly 3 decades, she worked in IT for Verizon. She's retired now. And like a lot of African Americans, Esther has lived with kidney disease. In fact, Black Americans are 3 to 4 times more likely to have kidney disease than white Americans. Ever since Esther was diagnosed, her doctors have been monitoring her kidney function with routine eGFR tests. And even though her kidney function was slowly declining over time, they didn't seem worried, and she wasn't either.
My number was always higher than the non-African American number. In my mind, it was a positive thing. My GFR is higher, so I must be doing a little bit better.
But in 2017, she went to see her doctor again. And this time, the test showed that her disease had progressed to stage 4.
When my nephrologist told me I needed to prepare for either dialysis or a transplant, I couldn't talk for 3 days about it. It really shook me at that point. I'm like, my goodness, I'm actually here at this stage. And that was frightening.
Esther was scared. Her mother and sister had both been on dialysis before they died, and she'd seen the toll it took on their bodies. Esther's doctor put her on a wait list for a kidney transplant. She was told it could take 10 years before she got one.
My nephrologist had said to me, you just get put on the list at the bottom.
And so she waited. We'll get back to Esther's story, but first, I wanted to understand why doctors were scoring Black and white patients differently in the first place. So I called Dr. Martha Pavlakis.
I am a transplant nephrologist. I'm the program director for solid organ transplant at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center.
Martha Pavlakis has been on the forefront of kidney treatment for decades. She says back in the 1990s, diagnosing kidney disease involved some guesswork.
When I first started training in kidney medicine or nephrology, there was not a single way to understand the amount of kidney function a person had. And there was no one good formula.
At the time, doctors relied on multiple blood and urine samples to measure creatinine levels and determine kidney function. But that was time-consuming and expensive, and it didn't tell the whole story. There are a lot of other factors that impact your kidneys, including age, sex, and body size. Doctors wanted to find a simpler and more accurate way to diagnose kidney disease. There was also a push to diversify clinical trials, which led researchers to look more closely at race. In 1999, Martha Pavlakis' colleagues published a groundbreaking study looking at creatinine levels in Black and white patients.
They found that for the same level of serum creatinine and age and gender, the Black patients that they studied had slightly better kidney function than the white patients.
The researchers concluded that the difference in creatinine levels was biological.
The Black patients were different because they were Black. And therein lies the root of the problem.
Today, it's largely understood that race is a socially constructed category, not a biological one. Genetically, humans are nearly identical. But when this study was conducted, a lot of doctors didn't question the idea that Black bodies were fundamentally different than white bodies. So the researchers took their data and they created a new medical algorithm for kidney function. The algorithm factored in creatinine levels, age, gender, and also race.
When they asked the question, how can we come up with a formula? One of the ways they broke it down was Black versus non-Black.
The researchers believed that race needed to be part of the new equation to account for the higher creatinine levels they saw in the African American patients. So they put in what's called a race correction into the equation, which resulted in a different score for Black patients.
We had a reason to include race, but we thought it was because it would make the equation more accurate.
This is Dr. Andrew Levy, a professor at Tufts University School of Medicine, who developed the eGFR test.
I led the research groups that have created the most widely used equations to estimate kidney function in the world.
I asked Andrew Levy what would account for the differences that he found between racial groups.
We inferred that the African Americans in our study had some factor other than kidney function that was making their creatinine higher. The most likely explanation was a higher muscle mass.
Levy and his colleagues had looked at previous studies that concluded Black people had more muscle mass than whites. And since creatinine is a natural byproduct of muscle tissue, Levy says that explained the higher creatinine levels in Black patients. In other words, it was biology. The new formula, called the eGFR test, or estimated glomerular filtration rate, was rolled out in hospitals and labs across the country. The test was hailed as a major scientific achievement. Now, with one simple blood test, doctors could easily monitor the severity of a patient's illness and more accurately determine their course of treatment.
And I never heard anybody say, wait a minute, they put race in there? That's not right. We just heard, ooh, there's a new formula. Here it is. Amazing.
The algorithm revolutionized kidney care, but it also had unintended consequences. It essentially inflated the kidney function scores for Black patients, making them look healthier than they actually were. Martha Pavlakis explains how it worked.
So if you take two 22-year-old young men, and then you use this formula, you would put in the age, 22, same. Gender, male, same. Creatinine, 4.0, same. Race, one kid's white, one kid's Black. And the white kid's percent kidney function is 19%. The Black kid's number is 23%.
That may not seem like a big difference, but it was enough to prevent many Black patients from getting on the transplant list.
Because once you get down to a level of 20%, you're eligible to be placed on the kidney transplant list.
The white kid would get on the list, the Black kid wouldn't. The reason? Their numbers were too good.
They gave us this equation, and this is what it is. This is the gospel according to nephrology.
That's Dr. Vanessa Grubbs. She first learned about the race-adjusted kidney equation in 2007 when she was training to be a nephrologist in San Francisco.
I remember the program director talking about the equations, and he said it is about muscle mass, that Black people on average were thought to have higher muscle mass than everybody else. And it just struck me as, wow, that's a great big statement.
The idea that Black people had more muscle mass didn't make sense to Grubbs.
I said, that seems like it wouldn't really apply if someone was, say, a really frail person, or even somebody who wasn't Black, who was like a bodybuilder or something like that. That doesn't seem right. And he's like, yeah, that's a good point. Anywho, I was like just rolling on to the next thing. It's like, yeah, we're not going to question this.
But Vanessa Grubbs couldn't let it go. She could see with her own patients that things didn't add up. She remembers one patient in particular, a Black man who came into her office with kidney disease.
When I met him, I needed a large size cuff to take his blood pressure because he was that muscular. And as a couple years passed, I just needed a regular cuff because he was wasting away.
Vanessa Grubbs believed her patient was so sick that he needed a kidney transplant. But when she plugged his numbers into the eGFR equation, they were too high to qualify him for the transplant list.
But his muscle mass is not the same anymore. So how can you tell me that I need to adjust his number by 20%?
It turns out that if her patient was white, he would have been eligible for a new kidney. So Grubbs decided to bypass the eGFR test and measure his kidney function using the older, more time-consuming method. That testing showed that her patient did in fact have severe kidney disease. And with those results, she was able to get him placed on the transplant wait list.
So it mattered. It absolutely mattered. It was literally life and death mattering.
Grubbs was angry, so she and some colleagues decided to write an op-ed in the local newspaper criticizing the race-corrected eGFR algorithm. And that drew the attention of her hospital's leaders.
They gathered us all in a room, and we got a dressing down where my boss, the chief of nephrology, says, well, you all should leave this to the experts. And I'm like, what do you mean leave this to the experts? I'm a nephrologist. I was like, what are you talking about? This is wrong. This equation is wrong. The evidence is flawed. It's racist.
Grubbs no longer felt welcome at her own institution.
And I was kind of questioning myself because it's like, wait, I'm like the only one that I know that's saying this. Am I crazy? Is something wrong with me?
Ultimately, she left the hospital in San Francisco and went to work at a community health center in Oakland that primarily treats Black patients. Listening to Vanessa Grubbs' story, I sensed the frustration and isolation she experienced. All throughout her medical career, she felt that doctors did not welcome interrogation, especially of established clinical practices. But by the time she left academic medicine, Grubbs wasn't the only one questioning what was happening or pushing back. She had a lot of company. The murders of Trayvon Martin in 2012 and later Michael Brown sparked the Black Lives Matter movement. And all across the country, systematic racism was being challenged. Medical trainees banded together to start White Coats for Black Lives. That included Danica Barry, who started at Harvard Medical School in 2015.
Initially, we were met with a lot of defensiveness. They were so tied to being like, well, of course there's biological difference by race. But that was such a deeply ingrained concept for them throughout their medical training and practice.
The students saw contradictions in what they were being taught in medical school.
We were simultaneously being taught two very different things about race and ethnicity.
In their genetics classes, they discussed the Human Genome Project, which revealed that people are 99.9% alike. Race was a social construct, a way to group or categorize people. It didn't define people biologically.
And then in contrast to that, we're being taught various clinical algorithms that adjust for race in a way that means that we should actually diagnose and treat and manage these patients differently because of their race. That race is biology.
One day, Danica Barry remembers being in class when the professor explained how race was part of the kidney function equation.
I remember texting my friend and being like, hey, isn't this weird that the professor is saying this right now? And they're like, yeah, that is weird.
That professor was Dr. Melanie Honig.
A student raised his hand and said, wait a second, why would you have a formula that gives better kidney function to the individuals at greatest risk? Other students echoed this concern together, and I said, you're right. I had really not thought about it before. I was just going along my work without paying attention.
Melanie Honig invited her students to meet after the lecture. Together, they started to investigate the science that led to the creation of the eGFR equation. First, the students examined the evidence. Where were the studies that showed that Black people had more muscle mass than white people?
They were from the 60s to early 90s, very small sample sizes, like 30 individuals, some among adolescents, and that just made this observation that African Americans had greater muscle mass.
Danica says those small problematic studies were cited over and over again, and through the decades, they became accepted as irrefutable science.
This wouldn't hold muster to any of our quality standards for research evidence. I think it just didn't pass the sniff test.
Then the students examined the methods behind Andrew Levy's study, the one that created the race-adjusted eGFR test. They wanted to know who reported the race of study participants, the patient or the medical provider, and how did they handle someone who was mixed race? What they found seemed absurd.
Racial identification was made by study staff, probably by assessment of skin color. What is that based on? Okay, so Barack Obama comes to you in your clinic. Are you going to put him in the Black group or the white or other group? Because this would actually change what you think his kidney function is.
What the students had discovered convinced Dr. Melanie Honig to take action at her own institution, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston.
I said, we have our own system. I know the lab folks. Maybe we can just fix that. That just seems crazy. Because I think once you see it, you can't unsee it.
In 2017, Beth Israel Deaconess became the first hospital in the country to eliminate race from the kidney function test. They created a race-neutral eGFR measurement for all patients, regardless of skin color.
I mean, the change at Beth Israel made it evident that other institutions could follow in their lead.
Naomi McKinsey was across the country following all of this very closely. She began medical school at the University of Washington in 2018. Growing up, Naomi had been subjected to racism, but she didn't expect to find racial assumptions as part of her medical training.
Do Black people have more muscles than white people? Like, I don't think that's the case. I ran track in high school and middle school. So, I mean, people would make racist jokes like, oh, she's going to run faster than us because, Black people have that extra leg muscle or whatever. But I was like, those are just racist jokes. Like, I don't think that's a basis to make a medical lab.
Early on in medical school, Naomi felt something was very wrong with the way race was being handled in her training. In lectures ranging from dermatology to nephrology, white patients were presented as the normal baseline, the standard patient. Naomi remembers in one class, the students were shown how to recognize skin allergies. But most of the images depicted rashes and irritations only on white skin.
So I went up to the professor and I asked, I understand that this is important. Thank you for the lecture. It would be helpful if we showed these images in different skin colors so we know how to identify them, because something that is red in a lighter skin color wouldn't show the same on someone that has my skin tone or darker.
Leaving the discussion with her professor, Naomi felt even more concerned.
We're not being trained to provide the same level of care for people that are not white.
And then one day she was sitting in a lecture learning about the kidney function equation, and she raised her hand.
I asked all the questions that I had because we've done our anatomy lab. We've looked at kidneys of different people. I was like, the Black kidneys and the white kidneys and the Asian kidneys, they all look the same. Like, what happens if a Black person gets a kidney from a white person? Does the kidney become Black now, or is it still a white kidney? And then I was looking at kind of like the reasoning for why this was done. Why do we correct for race? And nobody could really answer the questions.
It didn't take long for Naomi McKinsey to be labeled a troublemaker.
I'd already heard from several faculty members and classmates that we came to medical school to learn about medicine. We're not here to learn about this race stuff. And it felt like I was being told that your job is to sit down, take the information, and shut up. And that even if we're teaching things that feel harmful to your own community, you are exposed to accept this and then be the next person to enact that harm.
Everything came to a head in 2020. When the pandemic hit, Black communities suffered significantly higher death rates from COVID-19. And then there was the murder of George Floyd by police.
There was this quote-unquote racial reckoning happening in America.
Naomi and some of her classmates pushed the University of Washington Medical School to drop race from the kidney function test. But their professors were baffled. They still considered the eGFR to be the gold standard. So they asked a colleague, nephrologist Bessie Young, to speak to Naomi's class. As an African-American doctor and health disparities researcher, perhaps Young could reason with the students. But that's not what happened.
I had this epiphany as I was talking with them, as they were pushing back on me for, saying this is the way it is, and, race is this variable. And they're like, well, we reject that. We've come to a consensus as a class that we are not accepting this eGFR. Naomi was in that class. And later she came to me and she said, you're telling me that as a Black woman, that my kidney function is different just because I'm Black. And I just, after all my decades of doing health disparities work, is like, oh my gosh, they are right. How do I correct this? This isn't right.
The students were successful. Later that year, the University of Washington Medical Center dropped the race-corrected eGFR equation. And the pressure kept mounting. By 2021, the National Kidney Foundation and the American Society of Nephrology recommended removing race from kidney function testing. But what did the change actually mean for patients suffering from kidney disease, like Esther Daly? Slowly, some hospitals and doctors across the country began sending letters to Black patients, telling them that their eGFR numbers might be wrong and that they could be eligible to be moved up the transplant waitlist. But many Black patients had no idea that their kidney scores had been inflated. Naomi McKinsey and other medical students were frustrated at the slow pace of change. They wanted to get the word out. So they turned to social media.
In medicine, there was an equation that treated Black people's kidneys differently than all other races. My name is Dr. Joel, the medical mythbuster, and let's talk about racial biases with kidney function tests. Glomerular filtration rate, or GFR, is a measure of how
the videos went viral.
I saw the illustration of two kidneys, so I immediately clicked on it.
Anise Ellis is Esther Daly's sister. One day, she was at home scrolling on Instagram when she saw a video that made her immediately stop.
The medical student that I ended up following posted the disparity in the GFR numbers based on if you were Black and if you were non-Black. When I saw the disparities in the data and the unfairness of it all, my mouth fell open and I said, oh shit, I have to send this to Esther.
I remember the day she sent that to me, actually. I heard the text ping, ping, and I didn't respond to it because I was in the middle of cooking. And she called me. Did you see the text I sent? And I said, no, not yet. And she said, look at it, look at it, look at it. So I looked at it and I said, oh. She said, yeah, you need to read that. You need to see what's going on.
Esther picked up her phone and watched the video. She was stunned.
This means my numbers were worse than what they really were showing me.
If I had not come across the information, my thought was, would her medical team ever tell her?
Esther immediately called her doctor, but he told her the hospital didn't have a way yet to reach out to all patients who might be affected, so she'd have to wait. But Esther had waited long enough, so she decided to take matters into her own hands. She tracked down her previous eGFR scores and sent them to the kidney transplant team herself. She wanted her kidney function recalculated without race. The results came in, and Esther's new eGFR score was much lower. Her kidney was in a lot worse shape than she'd thought.
After the modifications were done, I received a new wait list date. I should have been on the transplant list 5 years earlier.
In March of 2024, almost 2 years after she first saw the video on Instagram, Esther Daly got a phone call.
A kidney was available for me, and my sister and niece immediately took me to the hospital that day, and I had a new kidney by that night.
Esther Daly says she is grateful for her new kidney. She has recovered from her surgery and she's feeling healthy. But she's also angry. She wants to know how this could happen.
It's unbelievable. So many people have been misdiagnosed or died in between, didn't get dialysis treatment earlier enough, didn't get on a kidney transplant list. It was just way too long overdue. Way overdue.
I wanted to circle back to Dr. Andrew Levy. He's the researcher who created the race-based eGFR equation. Levy says he stands by his studies that showed Black patients did in fact have higher levels of creatinine. But reflecting on it now, he's come to a different conclusion about why.
These differences, which were pretty well established, probably had to do with the effects of racism and segregation through the years. I don't think it's an innate property of race, but at that time, we literally just weren't thinking the way we're thinking today, that specification of age, sex, or race might be a handicap to individuals in getting treatment or to define kidney disease.
So where are we now? Most hospitals have switched to a race-neutral kidney equation. And so far, about 14,000 African American patients have been moved up the kidney transplant waiting list. But there are still tens of thousands of Black patients who might be eligible for a new kidney, but who haven't yet been identified. The kidney function test is only one example of a race-corrected diagnostic tool that prevents Black patients from getting needed medical treatment. There are many more still being used by doctors today that continue to harm Black patients. The question is why? Next time on The Race Equation, we take a look at lung function tests and how beliefs dating back to slavery are preventing Black patients with lung disease from being properly diagnosed.
Thomas Jefferson says the bodies of these enslaved peoples are fundamentally different than white bodies. They don't seem to breathe the same way. They don't feel pain the same way we do. Their bodies are fit for slavery.
It's not about race getting into the fabric of medicine, but of racism getting into the fabric of medicine.
It was just kind of a big, oh, moment, right? That was not what we expected to find now, right? It's scary because everything you've been doing is wrong.
The Race Equation is a special series from the New England Journal of Medicine. It is reported and produced by me, Rachel Gottbaum. Our senior producer is Catherine Fenolosa. Our editor is Sarah Kate Kramer. James Trout is our sound designer. Our engineer is Adam Strauss. Andrea Lopez Cruzado is our fact checker. We had help from Dr. Winfred Williams, Seema Aucha, Christine Gwynn, and Leocadia Marchwinski. Funding for this series is provided by the Doris Duke Foundation, committed to building a creative, equitable, and sustainable future.